Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Good morning. Welcome to Vecinos. My program today is an expansion of many of the topics that we've had in the past, reaching out to all aspects of the Latino community. I'm making a genuine effort to show that we're a diverse community, economically, sexual preference, health-wise, beliefs, everything. And today my guest is Fernando Lopez, Executive Director of Pride. I'm going to ask Fernando to first tell us who you are and where you grew up and a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. So thank you, Maria, so much for having me today.
You're welcome.
I think I like to start when I talk about myself, talking about my family and where they come from, because that's informed who I am as a person. I'm a first-generation U.S. citizen. My father's side, they're originally from Chapala, Jalisco, and his father was an artist and an architect and a mason, and he came to the United States for a better life for his family and slowly brought the rest of my family, his wife and 8 children, to the Imperial Valley, and they all became migrant field workers. They worked all over the Imperial Valley and the state of California in the fields for most of their lives, and my grandfather worked in the fields pretty much until the day he died. On my mother's side of the family, they actually emigrated here from Russia. They were Jewish, and they emigrated here to escape the persecution that they were facing as Jews in Russia. And so my parents met in the Imperial Valley, and somehow that's how you get me, as the son of immigrants. And if you're familiar with the Imperial Valley, it's the most anti-gay county in all of the state of California.
I was not aware of that.
They voted 70% in favor of Proposition 8 back in 2008. And so you can imagine being a young queer person, a young gay man or child in the Imperial Valley was really challenging. I remember, growing up with a Latino Catholic Vietnam veteran father and this sort of feminist activist teacher of a mother who was Jewish, I was always raised with the concept that everyone should be treated equally. And they always prepared me for the discrimination that I would face because I was Latino, because I was an immigrant, and because I was mixed, right? My mother's family disowned her because she married my father. And my father's family was none too pleased, and they never called me by my name. They'd only call me the gringo because I came out pretty light compared to the rest of my family. But even in school, I remember just arguing a lot with my teachers when I would see people treated unfairly. And I remember confronting my teachers a lot, even in kindergarten, saying, well, that's not fair. Aren't we all the same? So I think that was always ingrained in me from very early on because of my parents' preparation for me to face the world and their experiences with discrimination and harassment, and that sort of made me that way also. My father worked in community housing, so I grew up around Section 8 housing and low-income youth and seniors on my dad's side, and my mom was a teacher for the visually impaired. So I grew up around the blind community and the visually impaired community as well. And then at a very early age, my brother was diagnosed with leukemia. He was my only brother, my younger brother. He was diagnosed when he was 5, and so we spent a lot of time here in San Diego at Children's Hospital. And so that was a struggle for my family as well. And I was always that more effeminate sort of kid. I was a smart kid. I was a shy kid. I was constantly teased and bullied because I was smart, because I was shy. I think you get teased for anything when you're a kid,
yeah.
Right?
I know.
And so where I grew up, was 85% Latino. So I was never really teased because I was Latino. I was we were the majority. But I was definitely teased because I was more effeminate and that smart kid. And I remember as early as the third grade being called a fruit and all the other, and a fairy and all the other F words that, you don't really want to say, but, and not really knowing what those words meant.
Did you feel you were different at that age?
I knew I was different probably in kindergarten. I think I knew something was different about me. I didn't understand what that was. That I identified more with the girls than with the boys. I wasn't a rough and tumble kid. I was much more delicate. I was much more, like I said, shy. And where the boys would play and want to fight, I wanted to do art, and I learned how to play the piano and the violin, and I had access to to draw and to paint, and I loved science and math, and I just loved learning, and that was fun for me. I loved sci-fi. I was a big Star Wars fan in the 80s and still today.
Some things we don't outgrow.
No, never. And I remember being called the word gay and not knowing what that meant, and knowing that being called gay was bad, it was wrong. You were going to go to hell and burn for all eternity. That was very ingrained in me, and that because you were going to get AIDS and you were going to die and you were going to go to hell.
Because AIDS was coming to be in
in the 80s, and I remember that being this fear that somehow I didn't know that I was gay. I didn't know what that meant really, but somehow I was being called this word, and that word was associated with such negativity, and it was associated with HIV and AIDS. And that meant death at the time, and that meant burning in hell for all eternity. And when you're a kid and you're hearing these sorts of things from your own family and your friends at school and the faculty at school and your institutions of faith, that's really depressing. And you internalize a lot, because where can you turn for support as a young kid? Because everyone around you is saying these words and they hurt, and you don't really know why. You don't really have the language yet to understand, or the emotions yet to understand why these words are hurting you so much.
So how was your junior high and high school years?
Well, junior high, my mother actually left my father for a woman, which sort of only escalated the homophobic conversations in the household. And I remember how much vitriol that my father would spit out. And at the time, my brother ended up being placed in a home. My mother took custody, but she also left me with my dad, who was very vehemently homophobic at the time. And I was, going into puberty and starting to figure out, I like boys, and that is me, and that word does mean something different, and gay means you like guys, and yeah, I do. And, okay.
It's okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But now I have to figure out what that means with this father who says that it's terrible and horrible. And when Matthew Shepard was killed in the 90s, that was a pivotal moment for me, because I saw someone who was young, who was gay, and who sort of looked like me a little. I could see my face in his face on the TV. And I remember my dad saying, mira, mijo, another good word I can't say, because the only good F word is a dead F word. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, it's not that hard to get a gun in this town. In fact, I think your brother has one. I'll get up, I'll walk down the street, I'll pick up the gun, I'll even bring it back here and put it to my head, and all you'll have to do is pull the trigger, and there'll be one more good F word in this world.
Is that how you told him you were gay?
And that's how I came out to my dad, because I have the flair for the dramatic, So, and I at that moment I was brave, but then I ran into my room crying, and what followed was years of homelessness. And
did he ask you to leave?
He didn't ask me to leave specifically, but it became so aggressive and violent, and between everything that he was doing and saying, I knew I couldn't live there anymore. I contemplated suicide. I actually attempted suicide twice and failed. And because it was just so bad at school, the bullying and the harassment was terrible at school. The principal threatened to expel me from school for being gay, even though I was the one getting bullied and harassed. He said it was my fault, that I was causing, just me being gay was causing a distraction at school, which I wasn't even out at the time. I was just being accused.
We'll be back in a minute to continue this story. Right now, I'm horrified that any school administrator would threaten a child with expulsion for being gay.
Thank you.
A podcast or radio show on WS Radio is a great way to create content marketing. Turn prospects into customers into raving fans. Contact Wade at WSRadio.com or call 866-WS-RADIO.
The richness of your life is reflected in the shimmering elegance found at Diolune Design. One-of-a-kind jewelry and pieces from Cynthia Dillon in silver and gold help to express your unique personality. The flowing designs of her creations will empower the way you move throughout your day. Join us online at DIOLUNdesigns.com.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com and the Wine and Dine Show on Vin Village Radio. Do you have a wine, event, product, or service to promote? Then contact VinVillage.com to reach thousands of wine lovers across the country. VinVillage connects like-minded wine enthusiasts with unique and exclusive wines, events, products, and services. To learn more, contact us on VinVillage.com. VinVillage is where wine lovers connect.
One person has the power to change the world, impact millions of lives, and leave a legacy for lifetimes to come. That person is you. In the New York Times bestseller, What is Your What?, Steve Olsher, award-winning author and founder of the Reinvention Workshop, reveals his proven process that has helped thousands of men and women discover, share, and monetize the one thing they were born to do. Grab your free copy now at www.whatisyourwhat.com/free. That's www.whatisyourwhat.com/free.
Take a break from politics. Tune in and learn something. WS Radio shows are worth your time and are filled with tips and advice. Add us to your lunch routine and we'll give you a meal for your mind.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of America's economy. Every Thursday, SBA Radio interviews industry professionals and is dedicated to provide small businesses with timely insights and innovations. Visit www.sbaradio.us for details.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McCullough brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcCullough.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McCulloughe. ChristopherMcCullough.com.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Schizophrenic.
Welcome back to Vecinos with my guest, Fernando Lopez. We were talking about Fernando Lopez's life growing up in the Imperial Valley as a gay young student, where a principal did threaten to expel him from school. Can we pick up there?
Sure. So I was essentially told if I ever came and complained again about bullying or harassment, that I would be expelled, that it was my fault. And yet I sort of felt empowered by that. I started to fight back against my bullies, verbally, not physically. I was very tiny, like maybe weighed 90 pounds back then. But I started to be more vocal, and that sort of seemed to keep the bullies at bay. And I took extra classes. I took summer school and took more classes before and after regular school. And so I ended up skipping my junior year of high school and graduated a year early. And because I just knew that if I could focus on my education, that maybe I would have a shot. And so I left San Diego and I left the Imperial Valley. I came to San Diego.
Now, were you homeless when you were in Imperial Valley?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was a little smart, and so I sold candy. I figured out that if I went to the store and bought candy for 5 cents and 10 cents and 15 cents, I could still sell it for $1, because that's what the vending machine sold it for. And so I made some money that way selling candy, which I wasn't supposed to do, and I got caught a couple times doing it at school. But that's how I managed to make money to pay for things like food. And because my brother had been sick and in the hospital so much when I was younger, and my parents went through this very acrimonious divorce, the folks in town were sort of used to me sleeping on couches and sleeping and having sleepovers. And so it was always like, oh, can Fernando sleep here tonight? Can Fernando sleep here tonight? And because I'd been sleeping on other people's couches and floors since I was 6 years old and my brother was in the hospital, it was sort of normal for folks to see me in their homes. So that's sort of how I got by the last remaining couple years of school. And then I came to San Diego, where I managed to get a job, but because my parents wouldn't emancipate me or pay for my college, I had to get a job and pay the full rate, which applying for or enrolling in school back then, the internet wasn't really that much of a thing back then. So you had to have a physical address where they would send things. And I just remember my professors always being upset with me that I didn't know the syllabus when I got there my first day, so I hadn't purchased my books, and I maybe hadn't done the first reading assignment because I just didn't know anything until I got to school that first day. So it was always really scary for me, but I stayed focused in school for a while, and then eventually I met the person who I would marry, and in that's when I really started to realize how unequal I was as a gay person, because you just sort of think, as a person, you're going to meet someone someday, you're going to fall in love, and then you get married, and then you have your life together. And when you're gay or LGBT, that's just not the case. And we realized, like, small things at first, like we couldn't be on each other's car insurance, and we couldn't be on each other's health insurance. And Michael was fired from his job 3 times in 2 years because he was gay. And the laws were very different back then, and it's really easy to forget how new these legal protections are for the LGBT community. And very early on in our marriage, he got sick and he collapsed at work. And I had to rush over and take him to the emergency room. And when I got him there, they wouldn't let me through the door because we weren't legally married. We were married. We had a ceremony and rings and all that, but it wasn't legal in the state of California. And domestic partnership registry was just that at the time. There was no legal protection. It was just really a registry. A lot of legal protections didn't come into play until 2001 and 2005. And so being prevented from even entering the hospital room where my husband was such a traumatic and terrifying experience. Here's this person that you love and you've committed your life to, and they're saying that you're not their family. And so that really, I think, was the tipping point for me to get involved in activism in a different way. I had always volunteered. I had always participated in things as a kid, as a young person in our GSA, or even just for the blind community before, but really, really getting involved and diving into LGBT activism and advocacy, that was the tipping point for me, was seeing my husband in there and watching them give him unnecessary surgery and drugs, and that I could be torn away from my spouse. That was just too much.
So this is how you became an activist. So what was your first activism as far as in the gay community?
Well, I think the first activism was reading. You can't do a lot unless you learn a lot, and I did as much as I could to study gender equity law and insurance non-discrimination, employment non-discrimination law, so that way I would have the arguments and could become an advocate. And so where I really started was as an advocate in the workplace with my husband's company and my company, advocating for domestic partner benefits back when it wasn't a legal requirement, and just to have those basic insurance protections for your spouse. So I'd say I got my start advocating in employment and insurance non-discrimination for LGBT folks. And then it was when Mayor Gavin Newsom invited couples to get married in San Francisco on February 12th, 2004, that my husband and I sort of looked at each other and we're like, oh, let's go. And so we drove up to San Francisco and we got married. And when we came back to San Diego, they were looking for couples to speak on the radio and TV, and nobody wanted to do it because back then it was more challenging, and people were afraid to lose their jobs and how it would affect their careers. And Michael and I were just like, well, you already lost your job 3 times, and we've been through so much. Like, why not speak out about it? And so it was that week that we started to be vocal, and we worked with our local LGBT community center and an organization called Marriage Equality USA, and we became media spokespeople for that. And it sort of just kept going from there. We kept getting asked to do more and more, and I kept doing more and more. And before I knew it, I was the San Diego County chapter leader for Marriage Equality USA, and then I was a regional field organizer for Equality California, and then I became a statewide director for Marriage Equality USA, and then their national director. And it just kept getting asked to do more and more work for the LGBT community over time, and I just kept saying yes. It was never my path that I thought I was going to go on. I thought I was going to design monsters in Star Wars movies. That was graphic design. There I go back to my nerd roots. I wanted to be a graphic artist and a designer in Star Wars films. But I just found this passion for my community there, and I started doing things like interfaith organizing and coalition building and political consulting. And about almost 7 years ago next month, is when an organization called San Diego Pride asked me to come and help them be more than just a party and turn them into a real social justice organization. And since that time, we've built out the organization into a very robust social justice education and advocacy organization. And I was just asked to be the executive director of it 2 months ago. So it's been an interesting journey.
Oh, this is wonderful. So it's very easy to use terms like equal justice, social justice. But tell us, in the gay community, can you give us like 3 really important, I know marriage would certainly be one of them, but important issues as far as social justice?
Sure. I think the brief summary, I guess, is we're looking to be human and recognized as human beings, right? The fight for marriage equality was never about just marriage or the 1,138 federal rights and 412 rights that came on a state level. It was about a whole segment of society saying that you are so inhuman, you don't have the capacity to love. And we had to prove ourselves as a community that, yes, we do. And by doing that, we humanized ourselves in a way that can reduce discrimination, violence, and violence that too often leads to death. Some of our most marginalized at the moment are our trans community members, our seniors who are going back into the closet in senior care facilities. And still what I experienced, was that homelessness as a young person. And 40% of our homeless youth population are LGBT identified. And I can tell you that 40% of our population is not LGBT, but 40% of our homeless youth population is, because parents are throwing their kids out like garbage. And we need to be better. We need to be better parents. We need to be better community stewards and taking care of our LGBT community, because what happens to one kid getting bullied in school this seems like a microaggression in one instance, but when it's coming from your friends, your faculty, your family, and your faith, over the long term and over all those people, it becomes this macro social impact with socioeconomical implications that aren't always apparent in the immediate moment when the discrimination is happening. But in the long term, it has huge social effects.
I had not thought about, well, I have thought about youth being thrown out and kicked out, and whatever term you want to use. Do you see it very much reconciliation happening?
It's rare.
I'm sorry, we're going to commercial. We'll be right back in a minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com.
Take a break from politics. Tune in and learn something. WS Radio shows are worth your time and are filled with tips and advice. Add us to your lunch routine, and we'll give you a meal for your mind.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children. After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The World Link program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.
Attention business owners, if you feel like your business owns you and want to grow your company and get your life back, then get the Scale Toolkit at scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com. Created by Wall Street Journal bestselling author David Finkel and Priceline.com co-founder Jeff Hoffman, this free collection of 36 videos and PDF tools will help you build a business, not a job. Go to scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com today and learn how to work less by getting your business to produce more.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of America's economy. Every Thursday, SBA Radio interviews industry professionals and is dedicated to provide small businesses with timely insights and innovations. Visit www.sbaradio.us for details.
If you heard that sound, you probably are eligible for insurance from Navy Mutual, insuring the men and women of the Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. Here's what one policyholder, retired Navy Commander Thomas Dade, had to say.
Navy Mutual is the best insurance decision I ever made. I wish you had a savings plan available that earned the rates my Navy Mutual insurance has been earning.
Navy Mutual Aid Association, started by military members in 1879, serves active, reserve, and retired military today. Navy Mutual honors our military by providing them affordable life insurance with the features they need without fine print, sales fees, or military service restrictions. Value, integrity, trust, and stability are the cornerstones on which our commitment to you and your loved ones are built. Call Navy Mutual at 1-800-628-6011 or NavyMutual.org for your personal life insurance plan consultation. 1-800-628-6011 or NavyMutual.org. Navy Mutual, insuring those who serve.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WS Radio.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
By Latino youth, especially in San Diego. But I think there is a different aspect when you're Latino because of some of the religious ties, the family ties. I could be completely wrong. And I'm certainly open to listening to your point of view.
Sure. So I think, for my family, I remember my grandmother especially, when I tried to reconcile with my family over time, my grandmother saying things like, "No hombres tan sucios," like men are dirty, and that this is not good. No es de Dios, like this is not God's way. And I remember when she told me that men are dirty, saying, "But Grandma, you married a man."
And that didn't go over very well.
Right. And, she used to tell me things like there is things for me as a Latino that I feel like were very culturally specific. Like things like my grandmother, where my family worked in the fields, my grandmother cooked for all the folks who worked in the fields. And so the kitchen was hers. That was her home. And she took great pride in that, to the point where I wasn't allowed to learn how to cook. I wasn't allowed to serve myself food because she took that as an offense. Like that was her job and her pride. And if I did that, I was taking that away from her. And so she would say things to me like, "Mijo, you need to marry a beautiful woman who will do your laundry and cook for you and clean for you." And I was like, "Abuela, like I can do those things for myself." And, she took great offense to that because culturally that's how she was raised and that's who she was. And over time, she would finally start to refer to my husband as La Mike. ¿Cómo estás, La Mike? And, that was her way around that. And but over time, I remember how she started to say just ¿Cómo estás, Mike? And that was I remember the day because it was a very, for me, I realized that she stopped referring to him in the feminine. And that was a huge moment for me. And it got to the point where my grandmother, who only spoke Spanish, and my husband did not speak Spanish, we would sit around the dinner table just during the day. And my grandmother would tell us stories about what it was like in Mexico growing up with her mother and her grandmother and who worked for the president of Mexico and in the kitchens. And we would sit and we would laugh and I would translate the stories for my husband and we would all talk and just have a great time. And that, just being present in my family and where they would say, you can't come to this quinceañera. And I would say, well, I'm coming anyway. And they're like, well, you can come, but you can't bring him. And who do you mean? You can't bring Michael. And I was like, well, I'm going to bring him. And, well, you can bring him, but you have to only refer to him as your friend. And I would say, okay. And then I would get there and I would start introducing him to everyone as my husband. And they would get so mad. But over the years of the fighting and the name calling and all the hurtful words, my husband and I just kept showing up and helping with Thanksgiving dinner and helping to take care of the kids and helping to clean up and do the dishes and being present at Christmas and Easter and every wedding and every funeral. And we were just there and a part of the family. And over time, the family realized that we were just familia, like we were just family, and that's all that mattered. And in 2009, my grandmother was hit by a car and killed. And we had to go to this funeral service for her in Brawley, and it's Catholic Mass and service, and it's all in Spanish. And I went there with my partner and held his hand in the church, and I was so worried. I was so worried because I'd heard anti-gay words spewed from that pulpit, and I just knew that somehow this priest was going to manage to work in something anti-gay into my grandmother's service, and I was so hurt. And I was overwhelmed with the fact that this church was standing room only, because when you cook for fields of people, they, you feed their stomachs and you feed their hearts. And from her church and her kitchen, she touched so many lives that it was standing room only in this church. And I was so overwhelmed to see how many lives she had touched. And I had no idea until that day. And person after person after person came up to me and hugged me and thanked me for what I was doing for my community, and told me that my grandmother was proud of me and that my grandmother loved what I was doing for my community, which was a huge step in the right direction for me, which was a huge progress, because here's who we're taught as gay people are not supposed to be your supporters. It's Latinos, it's Catholics, it's the Imperial Valley. And so here in this...
all three.
Right, all three here in this Catholic, Latino, Mexican, church, mostly immigrants, and, everyone was just so supportive and hugging me and thanking me and telling me how proud my grandmother was. And I didn't change their minds. My grandmother did, because she was proud of her grandson, just like any other abuela would be proud, right? And so that for me was really enlightening and I think a pivotal moment in my life, that so many families in so many parts of the world are having those life-changing moments that even the Pope is saying, hey, maybe we got this wrong. Yeah. Maybe we're treating gay people wrong. Maybe we can do better. And that didn't happen just all on his own. That happened because all of these families realized that they just love their children.
I know you reconciled with your father. Would you like to talk a little bit about that, when it happened and how it happened?
It was sort of the same way. It was fits and starts. It was him not understanding how what he did and how he acted was wrong. And, there were loud words and fighting on both sides, but over time and just being present, it started to heal. And I think the tipping point was really, again, later in 2010, a friend of mine was beat up just a few blocks away from our house. He and I were walking home together. It was Halloween weekend. And we parted ways. He walked a couple blocks one way. I walked a couple blocks the other way. And he got beat up because he was gay. And he ended up in the emergency room. And he's okay now. But I remember getting the phone call the next morning, and my dad was with me when I got the phone call. And he realized in that moment that could have been me. I could have been, it was only a couple blocks away. It was just a matter of timing that it was one person and not the other. And it was my friend and not me. And I think that really scared him, and realized that, he lost his wife, he lost his son in some ways, his other son, to cancer, and he didn't want to lose the last family tie that he had. He didn't want to lose his last son, and I think that really highlighted for his heart where his priorities were, and our relationship just got better and better from then, and now he's one of my best friends and my fiercest advocates. And, he'll call me and tell me all the time when good things are happening for the LGBT community, or when somebody's being anti-gay, a politician, he'll call me and say, oh, can you believe this guy?
And say, yes, that was Dad. You a few years ago.
But I never hold it over his head. I never, I smile and I appreciate the love and the connection that we have. And I would never go back and relive that hardship that we went through, because we already went through it, which is why when I give talks or do things like this on the radio where I talk about how the hard times, I don't let him listen, because I know I see him well up with tears when we talk about that time, because I know he feels remorse for how he treated his son. And he hopes that other parents don't treat their children that way, that if their parents, that if your kids come out of the closet, you loved them the day before. And why wouldn't you love them the day they come out to you? And why wouldn't you continue to love them the day after? He wishes that for other parents, and I know he wishes that if he could go back in time and change things, that he would. So I'm really proud of him. I'm proud of all that he's become, and he even volunteers at Pride. And
how neat!
I think a couple Saturdays from now, he's gonna cook carne asada and pollo asado for all the volunteers. So it's a good cook.
That's a big change.
Oh yeah.
And he's comfortable.
Oh yeah, he's great. I mean, he hangs out with all my friends now. He's just one of the guys hanging out, and you would never know. He's such a tender, soft, kind man that I don't think a lot of men are allowed to be. I don't think a lot of Latinos are allowed to be. And I saw my dad be that machismo, guy that we know in our community, and like just that hyper toxic sort of masculinity. But over the years, I think what he's been through, I know that he's always cared for people. He's always worked to take care of his family and his community. And now in his mind, I think that's expanded to mean that he cares for more children that aren't even his. He sees these kids that are struggling with their parents, and his heart breaks for them too. That's a tremendous growth, and it's a lot of progress for someone, especially a Latino. Now, is he still in the Imperial Valley? Mm-hmm. Oh, he retired last year, and so he's still there. He goes back and forth between the Imperial Valley, and he stays with me a little too often because we're really good friends. He stays in my guest room, and then he goes back to Chapala a lot, which is beautiful. I lived there off and on when I was a teenager too, and Chapala, Jalisco is just so beautiful town. And my grandfather actually built the house that he stays in, or that they lived in, and that is still ours down there. So just a tiny little shack. They weren't wealthy or anything, but it's a nice little place in Chapala. That's very nice for you. Our last segment, which we will be back to real soon, we'll be talking about the future for Pride. What's going on? How do you see the future, especially politically? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
On the internet, your business's reputation can be unjustly destroyed in an instant. Don't wait for that to happen. Building and marketing your 5-star reputation can increase your business by as much as 19%. Take control of your reputation and have the 5-star reputation you deserve with Reputation Marketing Solutions by DSI Development. Become the go-to company by visiting 5starrepmarketing.com. The number 5starrepmarketing.com.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com and the Wine and Dine Show on Vin Village Radio. Do you have a wine, event, product, or service to promote? Then contact VinVillage.com to reach thousands of wine lovers across the country. Vin Village connects like-minded wine enthusiasts with unique and exclusive wines, events, products, and services. To learn more, contact us on VinVillage.com. Vin Village is where wine lovers connect.
You've heard me talking about Progressive Medical Center. They have helped me feel my best. And Dr. Goli, tell us a little bit about integrative medicine. Why is that such a big deal at Progressive Medical Center, and how can that make me feel better?
Integrative medicine is just good medicine. It's combining the best of traditional medicine, nutritional medicine, natural medicine, and really helping the patient get to the root cause so they can take control of their health and really make an impact to improve not only their energy, their vitality, and just their overall outlook on their health and their life.
I procrastinated for a long time before I finally made an appointment. So why should someone not delay and go ahead and get set up and come see you guys?
Any journey begins with that first step, and that first step means making a decision to recognize that there's something wrong with you. Whether you have fatigue, inappropriate weight gain, not sleeping well, not concentrating, all of these issues, you can get to the root cause.
So many of us here at The Fish have gotten help from Progressive Medical Center. So why don't you find out more from them today? Go to progressivemedicalcenter.com.
This is your life. Live it well.
You take your smartphone almost everywhere you go. Now WSRadio.com can be there too. Search WS Radio in the Play Store for your Android devices or iTunes for Apple, and download the WS Radio application. WSRadio.com, on your phone and in your ear everywhere you go. Download the WS Radio application. Do it now. It's very easy. WSRadio.com.
Attention business owners. Does it feel like your business owns you? See if you qualify for a free 90-minute business coaching session to help you build a business, not a job. During this free 90-minute strategic consultation, one of our senior coaches will help you map out the best way to grow your company and get your life back. To learn more, go to MauiMasterminds.com/scale now. That's MauiMasterminds.com/scale now.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Welcome back to Vecinos. I'm Maria Garcia on WSRadio.com, the worldwide leader in Internet talk show. And my guest today is Fernando Lopez. And Fernando's going to talk to us a little bit about the future of Pride. He's the executive director, brand new, 2 months into this job. So tell us whatever you'd like us to know about Pride and what political activities are coming.
Sure. So, I just took on the job 2 months ago, but I've been with Pride for almost 7 years. I am the first Latino executive director of the organization for the 44-year history. All the executive directors, except for one, was white. We did have one black executive director for a couple years. And so it's different, I think, having someone who's Latino at the helm. One of my first jobs was to hire new staff. We were just down several staff members, and so we went from a predominantly white staff to now we are 70% people of color on our staff, and that diversity matters. The diversity in perspective, the diversity in life experience and networks and connections all sort of enhance what the organization can do, because you sort of widen the lens that you're looking through when you have more diverse opinions and perspectives. Our board right now is chaired by a black woman and a Latino man, and so we have diversity on our board as well, which is helping, I think, the organization expand. And so most folks will think of San Diego Pride as, oh, there's a party and there's a parade that happens once a year and it's rainbows, and maybe they think there's half-naked people or how there's drunk people or drag queens. And, we have all that too, and it's fun. And we do throw a party. Yeah, it's a party. It's a celebration. But even Pride Weekend itself kicks off with the Spirit of Stonewall Awards rally that's much more sort of politically centered and movement centered, where we honor our community's leaders. And this year's theme is Persist with Pride, and it's all about sort of the long game, the relay race of the movement and mentorship, and that leadership means building more leaders, and that you have to continue to build up the people around you and your young people and support them. And honor your elders and honor the people who have been there before and learn from them. And you can learn from each other, that learning is intergenerational. And we all have so much to teach each other. And that brilliance and insight can come from a diversity of people. And so our rally this year I think it's going to be really inspiring. I hope you come check it out. It's Friday the 13th and then of July. And then the parade, of course, is Saturday, the 14th. We have a 2-day festival in Balboa Park with about 40,000 people. There's a Mundo Latino stage. It's one of our stages. So there's all Latin music all day, all different kinds of Latin music all day in one of our stages. We have a movement hip-hop stage. And then one of our headlining acts for Sunday is TLC. We haven't announced our Saturday headliner yet.
Do you want to do it now?
No, we can't do it yet. But excited to do that later. And so that's sort of the party. But that party funds all of the rest of the work that we do. And we are the most philanthropic Pride in the world. We've given out over $2.5 million to local LGBT serving organizations. And we're actually one of the founders of the Inner Pride movement, which is in 1981, San Diego board member Doug Moore realized that our movement wasn't connected. Our global LGBT movement didn't have a network. And so they created the organization now known as Inner Pride, which is a way for our organizations and community and movement leaders all over the world to connect, to network, and to share best practices and resources. And where in some places Pride might seem like a party or a parade, in places like Latvia, it's very different. Or, Russia, it could mean a prison sentence. And in Uganda, for a while, it meant a death sentence. But by exerting international pressure and by building that network of support, we're able to shift policy on a geopolitical scale that most people wouldn't think is possible from a parade and a party, right? You think rainbows and balloons, but that's the visible party that we do. The real substantive education work is that in the last 4 years, we've met with over 450 delegates from 127 countries around the world, that we receive funding from the Department of State to do binational LGBT leadership work. And we're actually putting on a binational summit in Tijuana on May 19th of this year to help build up LGBT activists in Tijuana, Mexico. And we're reaching out all across Latin America and the Caribbean to build up those leaders as well. So there's a lot happening. We have women's programs and trans programs. We have youth programs. We're looking at expanding our senior programs. We have a very robust accessibility department that makes sure that all of our materials are in Braille and that we have ASL, because people who have disabilities are also LGBT, and we want to make sure that Pride and all of our programs are accessible to everyone. I could go on and on. We do a lot of lobbying and education work all the time.
I'm going to add something that we hadn't planned, but I do want to ask you a little bit about seniors, because I had never thought about seniors having to go back in the closet when they're going into assisted living. Can you tell us a little bit, because I'm really kind of shocked at that.
Yeah, so when you go into assisted care or any sort of senior living facility, just because you go into the facility doesn't mean that they're always going to be open and accepting of the LGBT community. It's just like, to oversimplify, just like if you go into a yogurt shop, you don't know the person serving you yogurt is anti-gay or pro-gay, right? So the same is true of any any space in life. But when you're a senior and you become more and more dependent on care, oftentimes the person who is the care provider, the caregiver, isn't always supportive. And so that can oftentimes force seniors to go back into the closet to escape persecution after they've already been through so much in their lives. And depending on the facility, too, where couples would be allowed to share the same space, that's not always the case in senior care facilities. So we're the first LGBT senior care facility is just opened up here in San Diego in North Park off of El Cajon Boulevard. And the LGBT Community Center is the case manager for that. And so they're doing some really great work around senior care.
Is it an assisted living facility? Where is it?
It's, where like the McDonald's is?
Yes.
In El Cajon Boulevard? Yeah, it's right just south of that. So you'll see there's rainbow stuff on the building.
The big building?
Yeah, those two new big buildings that are being built.
Okay.
So one of them is...
Yes,
yeah.
I knew that was Community Housing Works.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's what that is there. And so there's several other LGBT senior serving organizations in the region. We work with several of them to make sure that even at our events that there's areas for seniors to be out of the sun because we're in July, and make sure that they have water and that they can hear everything that's going on, and that we provide a robust list of LGBT culturally competent senior care. So when you come to Pride, even the festival is more than just a party. There's women's health care, there's trans resources, you can get tested for HIV on site. We have ongoing NA and AA meetings all throughout the festival. So there's really a lot of resources at the festival itself as well. It's not just a party.
Okay, we have less than 30 seconds. What is your last message to us?
I guess it would just be that, this work is intersectional, and you can be a part of any community in the world and be LGBT, and we're all fighting the same fight and the same struggle, and we just need to work on that together if we all want to be loved and equal.
I think that's the bottom line. Humanity and love. We need to take care of each other no matter what age, sexual preference, color we are, and there's not enough of that. I can honestly say that, especially in these trying times.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you've had a different aspect to your day today by listening to our show. Thank you very much. I'm Maria Garcia with WS Radio, the worldwide leader in Internet talk show.
A podcast or radio show on WS Radio is a great way to create content marketing. Turn prospects into customers into raving fans. Contact Wade at WSRadio.com or call 866-WS-RADIO.
Kenja Dixon was crowned the #1 sales executive through hard work, deep thinking, and the revelation of universal talk laws. He now wants to share these lessons with you. Universal talk laws are what you need to know and use in business and at home to have successful and effective conversations. Kenja Dixon shares his wisdom, action plans, and wealth. Each book comes with a chance to win $10,000. Find Universal Talk Laws at KenjaDixon.com. On the internet, your business's reputation can be unjustly destroyed in an instant. Don't wait for that to happen. Building and marketing your 5-star reputation can increase your business by as much as 19%. Take control of your reputation and have the 5-star reputation you deserve with Reputation Marketing Solutions by DSI Development. Become the go-to company by visiting 5starrepmarketing.com. The number 5starrepmarketing.com.
Hi, Scale listener. This is David Finkel, co-host with Jeff Hoffman of Scale Your Business. I wanted to let you know that our newest book, Scale, was just released and to encourage you to get your copy. The book will give you 7 proven principles to grow your business and get your life back. If you've ever wanted to grow your business, but held yourself back from fear that it would take over your life, then we urge you to get your copy of Scale today. It'll give you a proven roadmap for rapidly growing your business while also gaining more personal freedom. Scale will help you work less by getting your business to produce more. Scale is for every entrepreneur who ever wondered if they really own their business or if their business owns them. Get your copy online or at your local bookseller. For more information, visit us online at scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com. That's scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com.
Controversy and conversation to upset the status quo. A no-holds-barred exploration and obliteration of the limits of possibility. Join me, Steve Olsher, and my rambunctious crew on Reinvention Radio, where each week we scour the planet to bring you the world's foremost social, business, political, technology, and scientific disruptors who challenge the accepted and forge daring, cutting-edge paths. That's Reinvention Radio, where normal comes to die and mediocrity meets its final demise.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, VinVillage.com, where wine lovers connect. Be sure to tune in weekly to Vin Village Radio for exclusive, in-depth interviews with the who's who in wine and food.